Hello, Lynn Watts here with Wyatt the Underdog Books. And today I'm going to be talking about setting boundaries. And in particular, I'm going to talk about how, as elementary school counselors, you may be in a position where you need to teach families, parents, about setting boundaries. So I think it's important that you understand what boundaries are and how to go about in a positive way, in a constructive way, uh, teaching children about boundaries and using them in the family experience. So um, I think that sometimes for even us as counselors, setting boundaries can be a difficult topic. So if you're not familiar with setting boundaries, if you haven't had a lot of experience, perhaps you don't have young children, or maybe you didn't have a lot of boundaries in your life and you didn't learn how to set them, I think it's pretty important that you take some time to learn about it, experience it, look at how boundaries operate in your life so that you can teach others about them, because it's such a key concept as we help children to grow and learn. And of course, you set boundaries at school. So it's not just a parent thing, it's certainly a human thing in terms of setting boundaries. So let's talk about, first of all, what it means to set boundaries. And setting boundaries simply means to have clear expectations and clear limits. And as you can see, this definitely applies to children, but it certainly applies to us as adults as well. And that's why I think it's important to be clear about what boundaries are, how you set them in your life, and then it enhances your ability to teach others about them. So it helps children create a framework for what to expect. It helps them understand their responsibilities. It also gives them a sense of security. So these are some of the benefits, I guess you would say, of setting boundaries. It gives consistency and stability within a environment, a situation. It improves behavior because children know what is expected of them. That doesn't mean, of course, that they always perform as expected, but it does mean they know what the expectation is. So they have a much better chance that they're going to rise to that expectation than if it's kind of vague and they have to kind of play around with it and try different things and try and figure out what is it I'm supposed to do anyway. So I think you can see why boundaries are so important in improving behavior. It does create stronger relationships, parent-child relationships, but also teacher, child, student relationships. So it improves all relationships. And it also teaches life skills through setting those boundaries. So children learn how to meet expectations. They learn how to set expectations. They learn how to set boundaries with others, with their peers. And then as they grow older, they set boundaries in other situations. So boundaries can be a very, very important concept and thing to use. It also helps further respect for others, all right, for their space, for their authority, and so on. It improves responsibility because it helps students know what they are responsible for. It helps with self-control because certainly when there are boundaries, then a student has to control their own behavior, their expectations, and so on, and certainly their emotions. And it also develops resilience because we're all going to come up against boundaries that we don't like or that we have trouble perhaps meeting. And it helps us prepare for those kind of similar situations as we get older and encounter some of the many challenges and hardships in life. So it does develop resilience. So let's talk about some of the common areas where parents might set boundaries. One obvious one is screen time. And I think this can be a very important thing. And parents who don't establish any boundaries whatsoever around screen time, I think much later wish they had. So better to start out with that and then move as the child shows responsibility and understanding of what they can expect, how they can use screen time, then perhaps you would lessen those as they get older. But specific times for TV, video games, phones, all of that. Bedtime routines are an example of boundaries, setting a time, expectations in terms of what needs to be done in order to get ready for bed. All of this can be around the area of boundaries. Chores and responsibilities certainly fall into that category. So expectations of what a student should accomplish and should be responsible for around the house. Um, Respecting personal space is a boundary. All right. So, not allowing hitting or not allowing any kind of destructive behavior, not entering somebody else's room without permission, not using their belongings without permission. So, there's a lot of areas in terms of personal space. And then finally, there are behavior expectations in terms of how we behave related to each other, how we behave inside, how we behave outside. There are all kinds of ways that we can set and talk about boundaries. So, why is it hard many times for us as parents to set boundaries? One is that when you set a boundary, you're bound to at some point run into conflict, and many of us are conflict averse. And so we don't want to get into conflict with our children or maybe with anybody. But it's true that if you don't set a boundary, you're probably going to have conflict anyway, and better to kind of set the stage and be prepared for that and then do it in a constructive way. But fear of conflict is one. Guilt can be another. Many parents perhaps feel guilty about saying no. They always want to be kind of the good guy, hate being the bad guy. So guilt can be one. For many parents, it is difficult to be consistent, especially in our busy, demanding kind of world. Many times it's easy to set a boundary, but it's hard to follow through with it. And it demands a lot of responsibility on us as adults to follow through and be consistent with boundaries. And then finally, there can be mixed messages. So many times, you have one parent who expects one thing and another who allows something else. And when get that mixed message, then it's confusing for children. They don't actually know how they should behave. So obviously communication and working together to develop the boundaries is certainly important. So there are many other things that you could say about boundaries, but I think that is sort of the baseline that we want to be available to talk to parents about, and certainly to help them understand the need for boundaries, the reasons that boundaries are helpful, not just to them as parents, but to children, that it can develop responsibility and resiliency and help them prepare for future life events. So, as always, thanks for listening, and thanks for all you do to help improve the lives of children.